Hey everyone, welcome back to the This Week I'm Into podcast. I'm Pete Tyler, and today we're talking about cocktails. Later on in the episode, we'll have my friend and roommate from Northwestern talk about his experience with cocktails. And I'm here with my friend and co-host, Paul Imbrugulio. Paul, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Hansi?
Just swell. I'm really excited for this one. I want to know, Paul, if we could just jump into it. What is your experience with cocktails?
Well, since I was 21.
Oh, is that right? Just 21, huh?
Yeah. Since I was 21,
Yep.
I've had a lot of experience with cocktails, at least indulging in them, not so much making them.
That's so funny. I thought I knew you before you were 21, but I guess
No.
my memory must be mistaken.
Yeah, you were definitely confusing me with somebody else. So anytime I reference an age that was before 21 in this podcast, I'm just going to edit it and say 21.
Likewise, it's only been 21 and above for me, always.
Exactly. So in these last few years, since I started drinking, I'm a big fan of cocktails, actually. I enjoy drinking them. I think they're a fun way to have like a beverage with dinner because they come in so many different varieties.
Yep.
So, I'm privy to a cocktail at a good dinner.
I would definitely concur with you there, Paul. I feel like I get a cocktail whenever I'm at a like slightly more expensive dinner, because it's part of the fun, it's part of the meal. But I'm kind of with you that like I don't have cocktails all too often, but when I do, I usually really enjoy it as part of the experience.
Okay, quick interlude on your restaurant touring.
Sure.
I don't know about you, but when I go to a restaurant, especially a new one, right, where I want to like try a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
I feel like I have to get at least something on top of a main meal. And, I'm sure there's people who come from families that always do like apps and drinks, dessert, right? But I don't think that I'm always a like get more than a main type of guy. So I feel like my normal one, because I feel like I get too much food, if I get an appetizer or a dessert along with my main, I'll get like a fun cocktail.
Ooh, okay.
Just so you like get to try different parts of each restaurant,
So if I can set the scene for you, Paul, you are at the restaurant. It's a little bit of a fancier restaurant. You've just ordered.
I put on a button-down shirt.
You did have to put a button-down shirt to be welcomed into this restaurant, and you just sat down. The waiter is returning in about 2 minutes, and your eyes are looking over the menu, and specifically, you're looking at the cocktail section. What draws your eye when you're looking at that section?
Ooh, great question. I definitely have a couple go-tos. I like an old fashioned, and I'll start this by saying that I do not like whiskey. But
that's a huge component of the old fashioned.
I don't know what it is about old fashions that makes me like them because I don't like whiskey. It's one of those things where I think that I feel like I'm a little manlier when I'm drinking it. So like there's something about me not liking it that I think makes me kind of like it. But there was one in DC that I had that was so good that it's like I'm chasing that singular experience again.
Oh, interesting.
And so I keep ordering it to try to find like what was it about that one old fashioned that made me like it.
Wait, yeah, can you tell me like what is there any clue to why that one was different?
No, I have no idea. And I have no idea where I even got it. I know it was near the Nats Park, but I don't know like what bar it was at. So it's a little bit lost to time at this point. Because, it was definitely not that long ago because I'm not that much older than 21. But if it was probably when I was like 18.
What an enigma, elusive mystery. Okay.
Yeah, your mind plays tricks on you. The other things that I probably go for is anything with mint, anything with lychee, or anything with a nice herb like rosemary or something like that. I could honestly say I feel like I'm drawn to a lot of things, but those are probably the three main things. And I would probably pick one of those over an old fashioned. I like the fruitier ones, I think, more than the dark liquors.
I'm with you.
What about you?
I mean, I like the lychee also, but I will say that if I'm ordering a cocktail, 9 times out of 10, I'm getting a Moscow Mule. I'd love a Moscow Mule.
Oh.
Yeah.
I feel you. I've been on such a kick recently, and honestly, screw the vodka. It's just the ginger beer that I want.
I'm with you. Well, so I wanted to just say, I mean, Moscow Mule, if someone didn't know, it's vodka, ginger beer, lime juice, and it has to come in a copper cup. If it doesn't come in a copper mug, it's not a real Moscow Mule. So whenever I order a Moscow Mule and it comes in a glass, I'm like, oh, this ain't right.
Take it
It
back.
doesn't hit. There's just something about the copper mug that I just freaking love. It's just like, it's cold. I don't know. It feels, cold when you're drinking it. It's great.
It's just part of the aesthetic that you're trying to get. It does have a fun texture too, because it almost looks like someone dropped it a bunch and it has these little dents in it. I don't know if it was in purpose, the poor construction, but I like it.
Maybe that's it. I mean, you talked about feeling manly with your old fashioned. I think maybe it's just I'm looking for an identity here, and it's the copper cup just gets me.
Yeah, and I don't think the copper actually leaches into your drink, as I've heard before. So I think on that front, you're safe.
That sounds like pseudoscience, but cannot confirm nor deny.
Yeah, let me call out one more drink, Hans.
Sure.
Because I feel like I could just talk about drinks that I like a lot, and we'd probably never get anywhere. But the one that I enjoyed at the first bar that I ever used to go to in high school was there was a happy hour deal, and one of the options on it was called a fuzzy navel.
Oh,
I might have tried to make these for you in college, but they're so good. It's vodka, peach schnapps, orange juice, and I think a maraschino cherry. But I don't know if that's required or if that's just something that this bar did. And it's so good.
Paul, I am actually so happy you brought up the fuzzy navel. I do have a little story to tell about cocktails involving the fuzzy navel specifically.
No way. I didn't even think that was a well-known one.
It's not, and you'll see why.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope I'm not about to be embarrassed.
No. So, just talking about my experience with cocktails, I'm also an enjoyer of cocktails, but I did work as a bartender for like 6 months, right after I graduated college. And in that time, I was a bartender for a catering company. So we were doing like business school events and law school events and weddings, like so many weddings. And as part of that, I was a bartender, but had no training whatsoever. They were so desperate for a worker that they will hire anyone. And so they
saw a warm body and they ran with it.
Exactly. So that's where I feel that I had no training. I was like by far the most junior bartender on the team. Like I had no idea what I was doing. But like, I put Coke and rum together before. So, how hard could it be? But so at these weddings, it was a lot of fun, but like any kind of like specialty cocktail, like that the bride and groom wanted ahead of time, like we would just batch make it ahead of time. But of course, like you could come to the bar, you could order really anything you wanted. And one guy came up to me, and I was only good at mixing 2-ingredient cocktails. At that point, I don't even know if it's a cocktail. That's called like a mixed drink. Like that's just Coke and rum, gin and tonic. Like that's what I can do. And sometimes if you're lucky, I'd put a lemon wedge on it. But but this guy comes up to me.
This is a fancy.
Yeah, and he orders a fuzzy navel. He's like, "Hey, could I get a fuzzy navel?" And I looked at him and I said, "No."
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea how to make a fuzzy navel. That was just such a foreign concept to me. I just told the guy no.
You're not racking up the tips that night.
No, I certainly did not get a tip from that guy, and that is understandable.
Well, now you know what it is, and it's delicious.
Yes, and I think he actually did end up just going in the other line and ordering a fuzzy navel from my more senior bartender, and he's like, "Yo, yeah, no problem." So
I would be surprised if you had anything peach flavored. I feel like that's not standard at like a catered like wedding bar. But
yeah,
that's my problem. Is it's kind of hard to. Well, it's not hard to find, but people don't just like have peach schnapps or any peach liquor.
I think we did carry schnapps actually. I don't know if it's specifically peach schnapps. We carried some kind of flavor schnapps. So
you could probably get away with other fruity flavors.
Yeah. So I think maybe he did. We did have something to make a fuzzy navel. So I thought it was so funny. I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm just glad somebody else knows about it.
Yeah. Well, Paul, I did want to bring up something else, which is, I don't know if you know, but why is it called a cocktail?
You just want me to say something inappropriate.
Yep. Go ahead, Paul. What's your best guess?
So I think we're talking about the tale of a rooster. There was a beautiful rainstorm out in England, 1847, and there's one rooster and a bunch of hens in this field. And the water that trickled off the end of this cocktail fell into this glass that this farmer was drinking that he had mistaken for moonshine. And so that was the origin. Interesting. You didn't know I knew that, did you?
Paul, you're a beautiful storyteller, but I do have to admit I kind of led you astray there. There's no generally agreed upon origin of the word cocktail.
Well, exactly, which is why mine is at least somewhat equal to one of the ones you might say.
That is true. That you have as legitimate claim as anyone else because no one really knows. But I will say there was two kind of theories that I kept running across. But every single website when I was doing my research was always like, there's no real idea. But the first one was that there was a apothecary who was a French New Orleanian, and they would make drinks in egg cups and serve it to their friends. And the egg cup in French is named, and I'm so sorry because I'm gonna butcher this. It's a coquetier or coquetier. Sorry, I've never taken French, so that's tough for me. But then it was kind of a little bit bastardized from coquetier to cocktail. So that's one theory. The other theory is that the name for a horse with a dressed up tail or a shortened tail that would stand up rather than falling down would be called cocktailed. I'm guessing that's probably from the chicken like you were talking about.
Yeah.
But the idea is...
I was part right.
Yeah, I think you were. But the idea was at some point when you were going in to get a drink, if you dressed up your drink... it was like how you dressed up a horse's tail, so it was called a cocktail. Or the other running theory is that if you had enough of these, you would end up kind of looking like a cocktail. Messed up, hair, you'd look, a little off, like a cocktail. There's no agreed upon definition of cocktail here, so that's or origin. So
that's okay. I like to think that I was at least somewhat close. I was on the right track.
You have as legitimate claim as anyone else, so I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, I guess the other thing I wanted to touch on was probably the most famous cocktail experience that is like colloquially known. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, cocktail experience?
Yeah.
More than just drinking it? Like, am I ingesting it in another way or...
Through the nasal cavity, I think.
Yeah, that's the cavity I was thinking about.
Oh, jeez. But I was going to bring up the Epcot around the world cocktails.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, I am aware of that.
Okay, because I think a lot of people would be especially keen on this kind of cocktail experience, including me. I've never done it. Have you done it, Paul?
No, I've never even been to Epcot. I think that's the one in Florida, right? I've never been.
That's right. Yeah, part of the Disney parks system. It's one of the handful down there in Florida.
And so I think there's 13. Do you know how many countries there are?
11.
Okay. So there's 11 different countries represented at Epcot.
I believe, that might need some checks, but yeah.
Whatever, more or less. So there's more or less 11.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to have a alcoholic beverage at every single one of these because they all have a different like signature or a different cocktail or drink that you can get within the day, I believe. Yep. If you're curious, I did watch a TikTok about it. I think it costs around $300 to get a drink at each one. They're not cheap. No, that sounds way too much.
I was seeing about an average of 200, but certainly 200. Could go over. Like that was an average. You could go less or more. So 300 is actually not out of the question, but like on average.
Yeah. It's a cocktail, which let's be honest, have gotten really expensive these days.
Yeah.
And it's at Disney.
Exactly.
So $30 for a drink. Yeah. Maybe it's not unreasonable.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to run you quite a bit of money. So yeah. And it's also so funny watching the videos because it's 11 drinks and like it's going to take you many hours, but it is 11 drinks in a row. So the people are like, hey, at the beginning, hey, we're doing the Epcot Around the World Challenge. so fun. And then at the end, they're just like stumbling, like hitting tables, like, oh, like God, like how are we even gonna like make it to Mexico? Like this is yeah.
The other thing was, how do these people get all of these drinks? There's no way by the 11th place that anyone is serving you.
That's a great question, Paul, because they are like legitimately, a lot of them on my list are very highly alcoholic drinks. So, because I mean, they're cocktails. Some of them are beers, but a lot of them are cocktails. And so it's like, you're going to have to span this. You're going to have to get into the park and start. And you're going to have to leave the park at the very end. I can only imagine that's the way to actually accomplish this.
It's an all-day affair. And honestly, you're probably feeling it for the next day or two. So, plan a long weekend.
Paul, can I point out some of my favorite cocktails from Epcot as I was doing my research?
Sure. Are you going to try to make them?
I might, or I might just point out why I think they're funny. But so there's 11 countries, right? So we said Canada, UK, France, Morocco, Japan, USA, Italy, Germany, China, Norway, and Mexico. Out of all those, Paul, there's a couple I want to focus on here. I thought it was very appropriate. Germany is not a cocktail if you're gonna go. I mean, you of course could get a cocktail, but the one they recommend is called it's a Hefeweizen beer. It's a wheat beer. So I thought that was very appropriate for Germany. They're like, hey, we're not messing around with the cocktails. We're just gonna do beer. And there's 3 that I want to point out that just really don't make sense to me. In the United Kingdom, you can get a snake bite pint, which is half cider and half harp lager.
That sounds like a really bad version of a shandy.
Yeah, a bad version of a shandy. And the reason I think this is so funny is because harp lager is actually based in Ireland, which is famously
you say it's
not part of the UK.
Oh, okay. I don't know enough about the UK.
You have
hey, at least they got some representation.
I guess, but like if it's like the Ireland's not part of the UK. Like you can't. I don't know. I thought that was funny.
Isn't half of it? I don't know.
I mean, Northern Ireland is part of the UK, but to call Northern Ireland and Ireland the same country, they would be very upset about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Who knew?
Don't want to get that.
It was going to become geography facts. The other one I wanted to point out is in China, you can get a cocktail called the Tipsy Ducks in Love. And
that's cute.
It's so cute. This cocktail includes black tea, makes sense, coffee, chocolate, cream, and bourbon. That doesn't make sense to me, as bourbon is famously American.
I think that we just have to accept that the Chinese love whiskey, which I can corroborate because of my uncles.
Yeah.
So, they've just adopted an American classic.
Okay, I can actually get behind that. I just thought I was funny. I was like, the drink from China at Epcot is like it sounds like an American drink.
So the other thing about that too, not to shame Chinese liquor, but if you've ever had it, it's awful. So thank you, Disney, for not subjecting your patrons to the gasoline that is the local Chinese whiskey.
Okay.
Or not whiskey, but just liquor.
Okay. I definitely I don't know enough to corroborate your story there, but I do believe you. There's one other that I wanted to point out. And also I have all the ingredients here if you want to know any of them. But Norway, their cocktail was called the Troll Cream.
Ew.
I know. It's horrible. Like, what are you doing, Disney? You could have done so much better with that. Come on.
You think they're based off of like a character? Like, is this the Hans's from Frozen or something? Like, didn't they have like ice trolls or something?
Oh, that's actually a great question. And I'm not familiar enough with Disney to confirm or deny that. But for the Troll Cream, it is a cranberry and vanilla slush with dragonberry rum and whipped cream.
Yeah, see, I think that I would like that one.
I think I'd like that one, but I will say that I think you'd be hard pressed to find that anywhere in Norway.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, I'm being too critical. That's the theme. Is like, just go have fun at Disney and drink the drinks.
Well, Hans, just have 11 drinks and then you'll think differently about each one of those.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
The thing that I was reading about with cocktails which isn't really much to do with the contents of the cocktail, but was more surrounding the glasses that each of them were put in. You know, you get enough cocktails, you realize that they're all served in these different glasses. And I'm sure you've asked yourself, like, why is one served in one served the other? I mean, you know, there's a classic like martini glass, that kind of like triangular like shape that I always spill all my drinks out of. You know, why couldn't they have put one of those in like a curved glass? I don't want to speak to each one because I'm sure there's a lot of like history behind why some are shaped some ways, and why does a martini glass not have a lip on it? But some of the parts that I thought were cool were some of the ones that were described as having specific shapes because they added a certain aspect to your drink.
Oh, interesting.
Or they provided some sort of fit for use purpose. So the martini glass, while there are other glasses that have a similar long stem, they were saying that a lot of glasses with long stems, like the martini glass, are built in such a way that you can't hold the part of the glass where the liquid's in, that you need to hold the stem.
Oh, yeah.
To keep it cold, so your hand doesn't warm up the drink, especially because there's no ice in a lot of those top bowl long stem type of glasses.
Yeah.
And then the other thing with the wide edges for glasses like a martini, but there's also kind of the round glasses that I would say is like a really classic cocktail, is like the stem with kind of the bowl shape, is that the long edges or the wide edges are a lot better for having like your aromas. So if you ever have like smoked drinks or just like drinks with like a lot of smells to them, they often have like a pretty wide opening at the top to kind of allow that to like get to your nose while you're drinking it.
Oh, that's brilliant, actually. I don't know if I've ever thought of that, but that makes sense. As you're lifting it up and you're obviously like smelling the alcohol or the cocktail, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
The glass is specifically shaped for your drinking experience, right?
Yeah, they're all kind of paired with like either like what's in the drink and or, how you're drinking it. So I think the one that I was trying to describe is called a coupe glass. Like it looks like a martini glass, but it's more rounded. And then kind of like a large contrast to that one is it's called, I think, a Collins glass for the Tom Collins, I think is kind of like the drink that made that cup, gave it its name. But that one's really good because it's long and skinny. So it's really good for ice. You can put a lot of ice in it to keep your drink really cold. And I think it's really good when you top mixers. Like you'll notice like a lot of drinks like that have like soda, water, or something on the top that like fills it up. So that one's kind of good for like a whole different purpose. So I thought those were really cool. And maybe Jacob will have more to talk about like the different kind of glasses if he uses them. But I think there's a lot of almost science behind why some are used than others.
Paul, I'm so impressed. I feel like you brought the fun facts this time, and I'm loving it.
Dang, I'll create my own section next time.
Paul's glassware. That'd be a great segment.
That'll be our first line of merchandise.
Perfect.
This is a complete side fact, but I tried to figure out how to do glass etching at one point, and I was just using some kind of corrosive chemical that scratches things into glass. It's pretty cool.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Paul, I'm so happy you brought your fun facts. Can I hit you with some fun facts?
Yeah, hit me with them.
The most expensive cocktail, with the caveat that the most expensive cocktail that I could find, is from the Ritz-Carlton Tokyo, and it's called the Diamonds Are Forever Martini. It is $19,000.
Oh my God.
Paul, do you want to make a guess as to why it would be that expensive?
Does it have a 5-carat diamond in
it? You are a genius, my guy. It is, the cocktail itself is vodka and lime juice. That's it. But it comes with a 1-carat, albeit not 5-carat, but 1-carat diamond in the glass. And you get serenaded by a live band when you order it. So
I don't know much about diamonds, but there's just no way that that's worth it.
I know, that seems kind of ridiculous to me, but it only exists because someone has ordered it.
It's like a worse version of you doing like one of those proposals at a restaurant and you're like, hide the diamond in the champagne. But you paid $19,000 for it.
Yeah, that's actually ridiculous to me. Paul, the phrase happy hour, any idea where that came from?
Where did happy hour originate from? I have no idea.
Happy hour comes from the U.S. Navy, where sailors were given a designated downtime to relax, and many chose in this time to grab a drink, allegedly. So this is where the origin of happy hour comes from.
Okay, that's cool.
Cocktail specific fun fact. Bitters. You know bitters that go into, specific cocktails, right?
Yeah, that bottle that people shake, nothing actually comes out of it, but it's
Exactly.
supposed to do something.
Exactly, yes. So the most famous brand of bitters is called Angostura bitters, right? And
Yep.
they're famous ingredient used in making cocktails. And if you've ever seen an Angostura bottle, it's very like noticeable, or it's very iconic. It's a small bottle but has a very much oversized label, always included with it. And allegedly, there's two brothers who made Angostura, and they decided when they were making Angostura that they would divide their labor. So one brother was in charge of ordering the bottles, one brother was in charge of ordering the labels, and apparently there was a miscommunication. And the brother that ordered the labels ordered them too big, and the brother that ordered the bottles ordered them too small. And then they got an oversized label on their Angostura bottle. And then they said, well, hell, let's just keep it like this. So so that is why the Angostura bottle has a oversized label always.
Wait, I love that. I always thought that it was just because it got used and, you kind of like shake it and it's falling off. That's so funny.
I guess there's legitimate lore to why that bottle looks like it does.
I don't want to say that that's been my favorite Hans fact so far, but I think it
wow,
is.
Okay. I think maybe because it had the story behind it that it was.
Yeah.
Okay, one more for you, Paul. The word to toast, as in like we're toasting drinks, comes from the Romans, who would add pieces of toasted breadcrumb to their wine to soak up any residual acidity.
Huh. Okay, tell me if this came up, and I'm not claiming like I looked this up, but I heard that people do cheers because it was supposed to be some sort of like, we're mixing drinks in case you poison me. Is that a true story? Or is that just something that I've heard?
I did not come across that in my research, but
have you heard it before?
Love that story. No, that's first for me.
Yeah, I thought when you said the Romans, I think I heard this story of like a similar, like more ancient age where people would cheers, and the whole point is you're supposed to like slosh your drinks together. Yeah. So, if you poison my drink, like now you would have the chance of poisoning yourself.
Okay. No, that's my first time hearing that. That I do love that though. That might be my favorite Paul fact. Also has a good story behind it. Paul, I just also wanted to give out one shout out just to one YouTube channel that I actually really enjoyed before the idea of cocktails as a podcast episode even came into our minds. It's called How to Drink on YouTube. He's a very wholesome fellow. He makes a lot of fun cocktails. He has a lot of like good guests on his YouTube shows. And to prepare for this podcast episode, I watched his YouTube where he actually went to Epcot and did the Around the World. And it was wildly entertaining. It just had me cracking up. But I do really enjoy his channel. So I want to give How to Drink a shout out.
Nice.
Yeah, so with that in mind, Paul, is there anything else you want to touch on?
The only thing that I wanted to talk about, and I don't actually have any of these things that I'm about to talk about, but gadgets for like making cocktails. I think it's kind of cool. Do you have any? And the reason that I was thinking about this is because I came across an ad after I started doing all this research for essentially like a Keurig for cocktails, which I'm sure probably has a lot of issues. I'm sure any snob would be like, you got to make it yourself. But they had these there's versions that had like pods that you just like filled up the cartridge with like vodka or whatever alcohol you wanted. And it would just like dispense you a cocktail, like a more sophisticated version of like a margarita machine.
Yeah. It's all technology, right? Like you just put in a K-cup basically, but for cocktails.
Yeah, but then there's other things that I think make more sense, right? Like like little smokers that you can put like a single glass under, and you put like some little wood chips in. I think there's a lot of cool cocktail gadgets that I think would be like really fun if you were like building out a cocktail set, because like I probably just have like whatever they call the little shaker thing is, and like a long spoon. Like I think that's about all I have in my kitchen to even make a cocktail, and I don't even know what it's called.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the names either, but I know Jacob, who's about to come onto the podcast, has so many gadgets, so we can probably ask him about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So with that in mind, we're going to have Jacob Lum coming up after the break. See you then.
Well, welcome back and we want to welcome our guest for this week's episode of This Week I'm Into podcast, Jacob. Jacob, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, how's it going?
Well, we're happy to have you, Jacob. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Jacob Lum. I'm Hans Peter Tyler's roommate currently, soon to not be so. And yeah, on the West Coast right now in San Francisco, but home is now Chicago.
Great, thanks, Jacob. And obviously this week we're talking about cocktails, so can you just explain a little bit about your intro to cocktails, or how familiar you are with it, why you like it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I started getting into cocktails around the legal drinking age of 21. But yeah, that was kind of my intro, was turning 21. I had a couple friends in college who were interested, and they kind of introduced me, and it really took off from there because I was able to drink now and then buy my own alcohol, which was big. Also, COVID hit, and there was nothing else to do but drink, so that helped.
When you were first introduced to cocktails, was it mostly like your standard, rum and coke, vodka soda, or did you just jump deep into like more elaborate drinks?
So yeah, I think that was kind of I would say my introduction to cocktails was the more elaborateness of it. Being around the college atmosphere, I always had like mixies and stuff like that. So I guess that was like the first introduction. But I had a friend who was like, hey, he was big into bartending. He was from Vegas. And he, for our like group of people junior year, he was hosting a lot of stuff and like made menus on Canva and like really doing whole actual cocktail lists. And so I was chatting with him, and he was like, I want to really do a deep dive into this drink called a Manhattan, which is a very heavy drink. And that was my first real cocktail, to be honest. It is whiskey and vermouth, which is a fortified wine. And then that's pretty much it. It's alcohol mixed with alcohol.
Yum.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
But, you do some bitters in there, some aromatics, you spruce it up. But his night, and there's actually only 3 of us who attended this, or I guess got the exclusive invite. But he had 3 different whiskeys and 3 different vermouths and like 2 different kinds of bitters. And we just did a matrix, and he made like 30 cocktails, and because each of us had to have one.
Yeah, that sounds like a great night. Sure. Do you remember what the winner was out of the matrix?
I do not, but he was keeping notes, and he was marking things down, surprisingly. So
yeah, because after 30 cocktails, I don't think there's much to remember.
No. But yeah, and when we did that in like 2 hours. Like, it was just make, drink, taste. We made a couple in a row, and then we had them in our little permutation lines and the little grid set up, and it was just, all right, a little taste here. Yeah.
Drink 30 Manhattan speed run over there.
Pretty much. It ended up being a really good night because that was the pregame. That was fun.
Cool.
But
so that was your intro, or like your first cocktail, and then how about after that? How did you start getting into it?
Yeah, so that got me interested, and that friend kept making, having cocktail nights, things like that. And then when I got to home after COVID sent everyone their separate ways, I was like, well, what can I do? I'm turning 21. Normally everyone would hit the bars, celebrate your first drink that way. And so it was like, well, what can I buy now, or what can I do? And it turned into me just going to a liquor store, because that's one of the few places that were open during COVID in my hometown, and making drinks. And I think it was just like talking to my friend, looking up YouTube videos. I was following a couple channels at the time that were like into mixology and things like that. So wanting to try things from them and what they made and what I thought looked interesting from that. So
I was just thinking about, your journey up until, I know I would I personally would call you like a mixologist. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been the beneficiary of some of your cocktails just from being your roommate. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to dive into, like, obviously I've seen your bar setup slash ingredient setup, but could you maybe just explain to someone who doesn't really know much about cocktails, like what kind of instruments you're using to make these
Yeah.
and what kind of ingredients you think are necessary?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can start really simple with a cocktail set. There's a lot of sets you can buy online. So we'll start with like the basis of the two ways to make cocktails. There's you can shake it or you can stir it. I don't know if you guys are big James Bond fans, but the martini he actually asked for it wrong, and that makes a pretty shit martini the way that James Bond orders it.
It just sounds cooler, huh?
Yeah, it does.
When it comes from a sexy Englishman, it can be whatever it wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you need, if you're going to stir it, all you need is a spoon. They have these fancy things where they have a whole glass setup, and then a spiraled spoon that's really long, a bar spoon. But you just need something to mix the two together if you're stirring it. But if you're getting into a lot more shaking, and that's what I think is I don't know, I guess sex appeal of some cocktails. It's what everyone wants to see from the bartenders and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you need a shaker, and they'll come in sets. There's a couple different ones. There's some that have like the strainer built in, and it's just a little top that you pour off, or there's called a Boston shaker, which looks like two tin cups that you kind of push together. And you need that. You need a strainer. There's a couple different kinds, and then a bar spoon, and then it's called a jig or a jigger, and it's usually measured out in different sizes. So it'll allot you from like a quarter ounce up to an ounce, usually on the small side, and then up to 2 ounces on the other side. And that's pretty much all the measurements, sizing that you might use into cocktail making. Anything after that is just building your bar out. So you can get things like muddlers, where if you're using fresh fruit, you want to crush it up. I know I have like an ice bag with a hammer to like make crushed ice for things. Getting a bar mat is really nice, so you keep things nice and clean. But if you're just getting into it, getting a cocktail shaker set is the way to go. And they have so many online. There's a couple different types. There's like I want to say it's a Japanese type, but yeah, it's the base, and then there's a little top that has a built-in strainer and a little cap on top of that. So it self-strains when you pour it out. Or there's the Boston shaker set. I prefer the Boston shaker set because you can always get those separated, and you can determine if you want to actually strain your drink or not. If you're lazy and you're just doing it for yourself and you don't want to waste ice, then you don't need to strain it at all. But the other one has its place. Makes it easy. It's a little smaller for storage.
Jacob, I have a really quick, stupid question. What is the purpose of the shaking?
Yeah, so shaking cocktails is to get it really cold really fast. And so what you do with your shaker, normally what you want is, like, the ideal shaking is a really big ice cube, like a rock, so like a 1 by 1 by 1 ice cube piece, and then a couple smaller pieces in there. So the big one displaces a lot of the liquid, and then the smaller one will get it cold fast. So a lot of shaking you'll do for like 10, 15 seconds maximum time, and that's to properly chill the drink, and then infuse it with some water to kind of dilute it a little bit, because you want a little bit if you're shaking a cocktail. The other method is stirring, and that is for the purpose of chilling it without diluting it by adding water. So you'll take a big piece of ice, like that 1 by 1 by 1, or a couple of those, put it in your glass, and then you stir it for upwards of like a minute even. So stirring it doesn't let the ice melt as much, and so then you get less of a watered down drink. And so if you're drinking things heavy.
So that's why James Bond's martini is worse. when it's shaken because it's more watered
Yeah.
down.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Interesting.
So if
Yeah.
you're, and this of course always depends on how much, I guess, of an alcoholic, for lack of a better word, you are. But if you're not used to heavy spirits and all that, a little bit of more dilution is just not going to kill you. Probably
Yeah.
actually help you.
It might actually be a good thing, yeah.
I just want my martinis with a blue cheese olive, not whatever the other kind is.
Blue cheese olive. That you can get pretty much anything to garnish your drinks. So the way that garnishes work is whatever is your preference. So you like a blue cheese olive, some other people don't. They like either like lemon twists or different like cherries. You'll see that a lot of times. Those are always fun because they add a little bit extra on the end, and they can change the drink a lot, because what you're supposed to do, if you ever get a cocktail and it's got a topper on it, or one of those cherries or those lemon twists or those blue cheese olives, some of them are for eating, like the olives. Some of them are not. Like, I don't think anyone's going to go eat an orange rind, but they act as aromatics. So you're supposed to breathe in and like inhale before you take a sip right next to that topping, that garnish. And then that's supposed to enhance the drink because that plays with the olfactory system and then helps enhance the cocktail.
Talking about ingredients, Jacob, if I
Mm-hmm.
was like a complete beginner bartender, mixologist, cocktail enthusiast, what would you recommend? Like maybe a handful of drinks that you think I should have in my back pocket. What if I really wanted to impress, someone's family or something?
Yeah, I think that, and this is how I started, because if you go down this rabbit hole that is cocktails, like you can see all these crazy ingredients and all these things, but it is expensive to build your home bar,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to just buy sheer amounts of liquor.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I feel like how a lot of people start is what we call prohibition cocktails. Those are cocktails that originated in the Prohibition era, in the 1920s time. And a lot of them boil down to really just 3 ingredients, which is really cool, because then you can just get a couple things and make a whole lot of different drinks. So the base of any good cocktail starts with the spirit that you have, the liquor. That's number 1. And then the second ingredient is sugar. And usually it's in the form of a simple syrup, which is really easy to make it your own, or you can buy it anywhere. And then a citrus. So a lemon juice or a lime juice primarily. And those can be substituted for themselves, but oftentimes they'll pair differently with different liquors. Like a lot of whiskeys, I think, ask for more lemon. But then you get like tequilas that'll take more lime. But if you mix them in and out, like unless you're tasting it side by side, you won't really be able to tell. And it just might be like, oh, this is different than like if I use lemon in my margarita, that might be a little different than what you might normally taste, but you won't be terrible by any means. So getting your citrus and getting your sugar, those are the 2 things that any bar cart really needs. And that's easy to get anywhere. And then it's just figuring out what spirit you want to invest in to start with. So let's see, you asked for a couple easy drinks here. The whiskey sour is an easy drink. If you're into whiskey, the only extra thing you might need is an egg, which is interesting.
Mm.
But then margarita, also same base. You got your spirit, citrus, and sugar, and then that gets fancy. You add a little orange liqueur, and then a daiquiri, a traditional daiquiri. Everyone's heard of a strawberry daiquiri or like a frozen daiquiri, but the original daiquiri is just rum, citrus, and sugar. And then I'll throw a fancy one at you guys. If you like gin, you get a gimlet, and it's just gin, citrus, and sugar. A gimlet, I would not recommend ordering from a bar, because a lot of modern bars, you're going to ask that, and they're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? And you're like, gin, sugar, lime. They're like, oh, okay, I can do that, but it's never really great.
Doesn't feel good walking up to the bar. They say, "What are you talking about?" But
Yeah.
I can tell you as an inexperienced bartender, I did that all the time. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't their fault; it was mine.
Yeah, Hans was like, I don't know what a whiskey soda is.
Can't do that. Jacob, can you talk about you? I mean, a lot of these drinks, right? There are 3 ingredients: citrus,
Mm-hmm.
sugar, base spirit. Do you have a recommendation for good base spirits?
Oh, that's its own conversation.
Yeah.
Anything, I mean, anything will work. It's your preference as the bartender, or I guess if you're making it for a party, like you should get their preference of liquor. The nice thing about cocktails is you can spruce any liquor up by making it a cocktail. And I go back to the Prohibition era, like that's what these are named for. And the history of cocktails came about kind of around then, or at least my understanding is it really evolved around then. And it's because during Prohibition, alcohol was illegal. And so people were trying to find ways to bootleg alcohol, make moonshine, or convert legal forms of alcohol into consumable types. But that changed the flavor of alcohol and made it even worse than what we think it is as of today. And so cocktails came about as ways to palatably drink alcohol and get drunk. So adding your citrus and your sugar will kind of kill some of that burn that you might get from harsh liquors, maybe brighten it up if you're talking citrus, give it a little sweetness to make it actually palatable for you to go down. So you could start with the bottom shelf of any liquor.
Name names. I want to hear.
Name names.
Yeah.
Jose Cuervo for talking tequila. Kind of blanking on names right now. I don't really know it's a bottom or a mid shelf anymore. Anything less than like $20 will probably be a bottom shelf liquor.
And if you're just a beginner, then those are gonna totally fly as you're learning how to actually do this. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
The trick is to buy one step up from what you were drinking in college.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Anything that would be served in a plastic bottle is not great.
That's
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll do
Avoid
glass.
plastic
We'll do
bottles.
Yeah, glass bottles only.
When you're talking about these kind of like 3 ingredient cocktails, and it might apply to things that are more than 3 ingredients, but is there like a golden ratio for like how you should be mixing these things, or is there kind of like a standard for like what you do from like alcohol to like your citrus juice or whatever that you recommend?
Yeah, a lot of things, and they play with the ratios based on balance. And if you get into it, you can kind of tell you're going to have to go through an experimentation phase of how much liquor do I put in, how much sugar, how much acid. And that all comes down to personal preference. So one that I like to stick to is a 2 to 1 to 1. 2 parts spirit, and then 1 part citrus, 1 part sugar. That'll give you a nice profile for how much of each is going to be in there. So we start with 2 because you want that in a real cocktail. You want that alcohol to be highlighted, and like that's the main ingredient. That's the focus of the drink. It's not like a lot of mixies or mixed drinks where the point is to mask the taste of alcohol. Like if you're getting into cocktails, like you want to be tasting that alcohol, and 2 ounces of something is a little more than a standard shot. I think a standard shot goes anywhere between 1 ounce and 2 ounces these days. Depends on who's pouring, the size of your glass and whatnot. But that's generally then will get you the 1 drink amount of ABV or alcohol by volume that you're looking for. And then 1 ounce of citrus and 1 ounce of sugar lets you then play with how much of, like, oh, I thought that one was a little not sweet enough. Let me bump up the sugar by 1/4 ounce or something like that. And then, like I said, with your jigger, you can see, personally I have a 2 to 1 jigger, and then it has lines on the inside to show how, like the 1/4 ounce, the 1/3 ounce, or 1.5 ounces on the 2 end side. So then you can really see how much and get fine with that ratio that you're trying to find for yourself.
You sound like a scientist with the all these kind of like exact measurements. I'm imagining you with like a little like notebook documenting every trial that you've gone through. It's nice that each trial is probably tasty as well.
Yeah, it really is, and I think that's how like now it's gone. The term has gone a little bit more towards the like mixology because of what you're bringing up, Paul, with like the science behind it, or like you're doing it, kind of trying to be exact and precise with how you're making these things. And so if you get into some people that are really serious about it, then they'll be, you can just imagine how much more precise they'll be.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you've been on this cocktail journey for a little while, is there any difference in how you enjoy cocktails now compared to how you enjoyed them either when you first started getting into cocktails or even before then?
Yeah, I think you have to have a shift in your head, or it goes from not really drinking for a good time, like you're drinking for the experience of drinking, and so getting into cocktails is like a lot of people like will dive into it, and then it'll be too much thinking, or like, oh, this is a lot of effort, but that's not the experience that they're chasing, right? Um, so if anyone's curious about it, like it almost might be better just to start going to a bar and then, or like a cocktail bar, like not your bar on Friday night where it's swamped and the bartender's flying around trying to serve as many people as possible, but like someone with a set menu, they'll list all the ingredients out, or like a dinner, and then you can try and experiment without putting up all the capital of investing in liquor and all these ingredients, and you'll find some pretty cool drinks out there because everyone's trying to be different or have something that's special that you can't just make at your own place. I think cocktails at cocktail bars get a bad rep because they are pretty expensive compared to the other things on the menu. I know Pete and I went to an establishment once, and the bottom price of things was $20, and that's at $20 after a cover fee. So
That's
Yeah,
nuts.
it was brutal.
it's
I recall at that place that the drink you got was pretty good, actually. It was like a
yeah.
smoky whiskey
I
kind of
sure hope
drink.
so.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and I think it was like maybe 20 something dollars, $24 maybe. And then the drink I got was a vodka soda, and I got served with the same bill for $24. I'm like, what is this?
When they charge you the cover fee, so you feel like you have to get something, or else you just completely wasted the cover.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so that place was an expensive place, but I got a cocktail that I would never have ever gotten before. For me to paint you a picture, Paul, it came out under this like glass dome, and then they pulled it up because they had smoked something inside of it. And then that was part of the presentation, like getting the smell of cigar smoke as it was up. And then it was like a cigar smoke infused drink. So you kind of got a little bit of that every time you took a sip. Things that I guess you could try to get into at your home bar. I personally have never tried to do that. That seems hard. You need to get a lot more other equipment as well, like a blowtorch and a glass chamber thing. I don't know, but
A little bell jar.
yeah. So I guess if you're curious about getting into cocktails, go to a place that has a nice bar with a nice menu, and you can order some stuff and see if that's really the experience that you want. Because I know for me, getting into it, it's like, why am I spending all this money to try and get the exact tiny right ratio of a drink? And it's because I wanted a fun, cool drinking experience. Sorry. And then that's something that I could share with other people. Like Pete and I at our place, we host a lot of parties, or we have hosted a lot of parties in the past. And I haven't made too many cocktails at it, but a couple times I've been like, hey, like I'm making this cocktail. Are people interested? Things like that. And it's always a talking point, and people always like to drink. And as I think part of my hospitality personality is like, oh, I want to make sure everyone has a good time. Let me give them an experience of a good cocktail, not just your simple rum and coke or something that you just throw in a solo cup.
Yeah, I can echo what Jacob says there. I mean, me personally, I can do two ingredients together and it still somehow tastes bad. But I've seen Jacob's cocktails. He's given them out at parties sometimes. It's always a really good time. And I will just echo, it does contribute to the experience. Jacob, I also wanted to get into if you had like a Mount Rushmore of cocktails,
Mm.
what is going on there?
Yeah, Mount Rushmore of cocktails. So I'm really big, and it's probably still my favorite drink of all time is a whiskey sour, and a homemade whiskey sour.
Hmm.
You can order one from a bar. A lot of times it'll be sour mix, which is you can buy that off the shelf too, but it's your sugar and your citrus mixed into one. It's preserved and all that, so they just have something they can do like equal parts sour mix, equal part whiskey. But the traditional way to make a whiskey sour is in your shaker glass, you put all the right ratio of stuff, and then you add one egg white. So you crack an egg, you sift out the yolk, and you throw it in there, or you can pour like I think it's a half ounce of liquid egg whites if you buy them from the carton. And they have substitutes if you're like vegan and all that. I think you can use like aquafaba from beans. Like that works out really well too. And people are always weirded out by saying either, yeah, I'm going to put bean juice in my cocktail or I'm going to put an egg white.
Yeah.
And it is a little strange concept, but what it does is it adds foam. So it makes the cocktail frothy. So when you pour it out, it gives it a nice foamy head, like if you ever opened or had a Guinness poured into a glass. The egg white aerates it a little bit better, and it's just a creamy, like smooth drinking experience. So yeah, whiskey sour, probably top one on there. I feel like I got to put the margarita on, and not a blended margarita either. You can do a blended, that's fine. Frozen cocktails are delicious.
Nothing against them. Nothing against
Yeah,
frozen
no, I
cocktails.
really like a good frozen cocktail on a hot day. But, and they're really easy to make in batch too. So if you're making a lot for a party or something, frozen is great. But single serving, I always take I guess not frozen. I don't know the term for not frozen.
Classic margarita. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
A liquid one.
A liquid
Yeah.
margarita.
But margaritas are great because you can add pretty much any juice to it and changes it completely. Like, and you can go to any Mexican restaurant and they have like a mango margarita, a guava margarita, strawberry margarita. You can do that by yourself too, with juice or with fresh ingredients. Talked about muddling. Get some strawberries, throw that on the bottom there, just crush them up, delicious. Two more. I do like a gimlet. I am a fan of gin, which is hard for a lot of people to get into. I think they work really well in cocktails. So if you're interested in trying out gin as a spirit, maybe get it in a cocktail first because it might surprise you. And last one, I don't know. There's so many cool. One thing we haven't really talked about too much is rum. I did have a big rum kick through the phases of cocktails you'll go into, or I experienced myself rather, was like based on the spirit that I have. I was like, all right, I got this new spirit. What are all the drinks I could possibly make with that? And then diving through recipes and all that online, and there are just so many rum cocktails out there. And they're called tiki cocktails, or you go to a tiki bar, and that's, I don't know the PC implications on all of that, but that's what they're called, tiki cocktails.
As long as they come in a fun cup, that's good enough for me.
I have a couple fun cups. I haven't brought them out, I don't think, at our parties and such, but you can get cool things. I think I have a little conch shell that you can get.
Oh, nice.
I need to bring that out for you, Petey, when I get back. Yeah. I'll say daiquiri because I can't think of a better one.
As an alternative last one, is there any cocktail that you're really excited to try to make? Like, have you ever thought of a completely new one on your own, been like, oh, I think these would taste good together?
No, I've never. I'm not that creative with it, Paul. I wish I was. But these people, there's so many recipes out there. What I will do if I have like, oh, I have these two ingredients, or oh, I think these two things might pair well together, is I'll look it up and I'll just be like, oh, what do I have in my fridge right now? I got some whiskey and I have some cherry juice. What are whiskey and cherry cocktails that'll go together? And you'll be surprised at what comes out. of the internet. There's so many things. There's a lot of things that are bad, but there are a lot of things that are good too. I think the most recent one I had was coffee liqueur and Jaeger, and I had something else. And I was like, all right, what can I make with these?
Interesting.
That sounds like a wild combination.
Yeah, there's some pretty bad stuff.
Inquisitive looks from both me and Paul here.
They both sound good individually, but together, I'm skeptical.
Right, yeah. So I think something that I kind of looking into getting into is, I guess, Jaeger. Because I've only ever had
Jaeger bombs.
Yeah, Jaeger bombs. And I was like, what else can Jaeger become? Like, I don't know if I drink it by itself, but you put it with Red Bull, it tastes delicious. So there's a coffee one. It was decent. I don't think I'd serve it to anyone unless they were very curious, but I'm sure there's a lot of other cocktails out there. And one thing you can do, actually, that's pretty cool, is any liquor that you find, Jaeger, Jose Cuervo, any tequilas that you might find, I'll just say like Terramana Tequila by The Rock, because I dove into that for a while. But if you go to their website and, you know, you're of legal drinking age, they have a lot of cocktails that they recommend that you use and the ratios to use with them. So if you're diving into that and you have a bottle, that's an easy way to get introduced to a couple new cocktails that you never tried before.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's like how on the, like a pasta box, it has like a recipe for whatever it is. That's a good idea.
Jacob, do you have like any particular, I know we talked a little bit about some cocktail experiences, but like any one that has been the most memorable to you?
Most memorable, probably all the ones where it's with someone else. Whether that be they're making it
so
with
gosh dang wholesome of an answer.
Yeah, I'll speak to like the first one I shared with you guys. And I wasn't even really making the cocktails at that point, but it was just me, 2 other people, so 3 of us total, hanging out, talking about it, and tasting them and comparing. And I think that's why I got into cocktails too. Like, it is an experience. Like, I, for myself, am very comfortable trying to make new drinks on my own, trying to experiment and things like that. But I think a lot of the times that I've had the most fun with it has been like, oh, hey, I got these things, or I came across this recipe, and we have an event going on. Do you guys anyone interested? I want to try and make this. And just hearing what everyone else thinks about them, like, whether or not you're making the cocktail, if you're consuming it, you're part of the experience too. Yeah, I'll say that one from the beginning. We had a party that we threw once, and I think I did watermelon basil margarita, I think, and that one was a good one. But yeah, probably top 2, just because of sharing it with others.
That's so freaking wholesome. Thank you, Jacob. How about, I did want to touch on one more cocktail that I had from you, or I got to try yours recently, which was that crazy, like, spicy, I think it had like habanero something in it. Can you give me a little insight into that recipe again?
Let me see if I can find this recipe, because it is a trip. It is a pretty disgusting cocktail, to be honest.
That's the one he wanted Hans to try.
I did get a sip.
We have a friend, Lance, who's very much down for anything, and he was a good sport. And I was like, I'm gonna make you something disgusting, and we're gonna try. He's like, let's do it.
Way to set the mentality going in there. Like, I'm gonna make you something disgusting. Let's just see how it goes.
Having fun with friends, isn't that basically half of it?
That is, yeah. Having fun with friends and getting drunk, I don't know. There's not much better than that, I think. For anyone interested, it's called The Loser. So that name sets it off really good to start with.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, it's from, I got it from a YouTube channel actually called The Educated Barfly. So if you're looking for intros into cocktail culture and seeing people make drinks and stuff, they're good. I don't have too much experience with them, to be honest, but the 2 that I go to a lot are Steve the bartender. He's an Aussie. He's a really cool Australian bartender. His accent's sweet. Very knowledgeable. Him, and then there's another one, American guy. The channel's called How to Drink. Both very good resources that I've utilized a lot and gotten recipes from. And surprisingly, I like the drink ratios from the Spruce Eats. I think they're more of a like recipe, like cooking website, but they have cocktails. Their ratio on cocktails is more to my palate, I think. Anyway, yeah, this the loser, 2 ounces of whiskey, your choice, 3/4 ounce of Jägermeister, 1/4 ounce of coffee liqueur, 1 ounce of Pepsi Cola, specifically Pepsi, 1/2 ounce of beef broth, and then 3 dashes of Bitterman's Hellfire Bitters, which is the habanero that Pete was talking about there. And then you top with your garnish is, well, it can be whatever you want. You can leave it on garnish, but they used beef jerky.
All right, Jacob's pulling up a picture for us of what it looks like. I'll post this on the Instagram later so people can see.
That sounded so horrendous. You know, it looks like a peach iced tea.
Yeah, it actually like looks appetizing. I think if you put the piece of beef jerky on top, it would look less appetizing, but
I'm not even as concerned about the taste as I am about the smell of all of those things mixed together. I think once you said beef broth, I was just like, I just don't understand what this would be.
Yeah, I have no idea who invented this or why they did.
The person who was like, I wonder what's in my fridge today, and saw Jägermeister and coffee liqueur and said, well, I guess I also have beef soup.
Yep. I think it was someone who probably had like a bitch cup or a loser's cup and was like, how do I make this fancy?
Yeah, no, it sounds more like in 2nd grade at my friend's birthday party where we put a little bit of every single thing we could find into this cup.
That sounds about right. Surprisingly, though, it is not the worst thing I have ever had.
Oh, what have you had that's worse?
I've had some pretty bad shots. Let's see.
Yeah, because this one was beefed up, so it tastes better.
Yeah. I think I had gin, a raw egg, and Tabasco once.
Oh, jeez.
In a shot form.
Wait, that sounds familiar. Do people do that with vodka?
Probably. I got it at a bar. They were like, this is the birthday shot. I was like, all right, screw me. Let's do it. Well, they didn't tell me what it was until after I had it. But they're like, we have a birthday shot that's free on the house. It's like, okay.
They're just having fun. Screwing with people.
Yeah, that way they'll get people who fake that it's their birthday for a free drink.
I will say, so that crazy sounding cocktail, though, if you really get into it, you can talk about, there's a lot of terms and jargon that people throw out there. But one thing it's taken a while to, I guess, develop myself is the ability to like see the evolution of a cocktail. And it's called that. It's from the first like breath you take in when you're sipping the garnish, and then all the way through like the last phase, I guess, is when you stop tasting the drink. So there's like the middle when you're still tasting it, and then the aftertaste that you might get. So a lot of times, like if you take a shot of whiskey or something really strong, that like afterburn, like that's part of the evolution of the drink. And so with that really disgusting one, like it's interesting to see how all of those flavors go together while you're still like tasting it, and then what evolves almost, and I can't really remember for that specific cocktail without having it, but with really cool cocktails, there'll be a point where you're like, whoa, this new flavor that might have been in the background is now coming to the front, or where did I taste this before? Like, I didn't know this was in the drink if you didn't make it or whatever. But yeah, getting into those like longer evolving cocktails is a cool thing if you're been at cocktail making for a while. It just makes the drink so much more interesting and adding to that experience.
Jacob, I also wanted to know, obviously, like with the spirit of this podcast being getting into something new, something interesting, a new hobby, a new passion every week. What's your kind of elevator pitch for getting into cocktail making as a hobby?
As a hobby, yeah, let's see. Elevator pitch would be you got some money, you got some time, and you got a bunch of friends you want to impress. This is a good way to do it. You can make some cool drinks. You can put them in fancy glasses, or you can serve them in solo cups, and everyone's gonna have questions for you afterwards.
I love that. That's one of the most eloquent elevator pitches I've ever heard, actually.
Happy to oblige.
Great. Thanks, Jacob. And then do you have any like plugs you want to put in either personally or any shout outs to any other content creators in the cocktail space?
No, I mentioned, the couple YouTube channels, How to Drink and Steve the Bartender. That's what I was watching a lot, even before I started making my own cocktails. And then, I feel like you guys are asking about like what spirits to get into. Like that's a whole other combo. You could have conversations just about like one spirit. Like whiskey is its own thing, which you guys might have. Hint at a possible future guest.
Giving away our secrets here, Jacob.
Yeah. But everything is your own preference. I think that's one thing that's kind of daunting about cocktails is like it feels like it's so elevated, or you go to these fancy places and there's this price tag on it. But it's your own drinking experience, so do whatever you want. What tastes good to you. Like that's what you're really in it for, right?
That is so beautiful and wholesome. I think that's a good place to end. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure, and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the This Week I'm Into podcast, and a huge thank you to Jacob Lum for sharing his hobby of making cocktails. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the next episode, please reach out at thisweekiminto@gmail.com. And please give us a follow on Instagram at thisweekiminto. Please rate us 5 stars and share this episode with a friend. We're doing our best to grow the podcast, and your help really goes a long way. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. And now, a word from our sponsor. But legally, they don't actually sponsor us.
Thank you, everybody, for waiting. For the missus, here's your margarita, and for you, sir, the loser.
Excuse me?
The little loser boy. That is you, isn't it?
What are you talking about?
I got the loser for you. That's what you ordered.
I said surprise me. What is this? Why is it in a sippy cup?
Oh, it just seems like your vibe. Or does the little loser baby boy need his binky?
Okay, fine, I'll try it. Oh my god, this is awful.
Oh, little loser boy doesn't like his sippy drink?
Hey folks, has this ever happened to you? Have you ever asked for a surprise cocktail and ended up with the loser? A drink so bad it makes you question all your life choices up until this very moment?
That's right, folks. With just one sip, the loser will take you on a wild ride from regret to denial and finally disgust.
Are you tired of enjoying your beverages? Do you miss the days when drinking was more like a dare?
Then the loser is the drink for you, specially crafted by a team of our bartenders who clearly hate their jobs. The loser is a guaranteed way to ruin your evening, or you can have your money back.
It's like a bad decision in a glass. Available wherever you get your drinks because, hey, why should drinking a cocktail be fun?
Wait. Hans, don't go just yet. Next up, we have the disaster. It's like the loser, but it has a pink umbrella in it.
Fine, I'll take another.
We knew you would.